So it's time to update my high yield stock tracker sheet with the new distributions we did earn this week. And I also bought some more SMCY. Then I want to show you a comparison between what the broker is showing, what my gain and loss is, versus what my actual or my real price per share is showing. I think you're going to see a huge difference between the two. Hello, my friends, this is Legend. So, as I stated, I did buy some more SMCY because it did break below that 10 on the RSI 2. And it did that on 6/29, so I ended up buying a few more shares of SMCY at that point. Now, as I've stated before, that does not mean that that's going to be the lowest price, right? Because as you can see, the close of Thursday, it actually had a lower price than the point that I actually purchased them at. And if that RSI 2 does drop below 10 again, I might even be picking up a few more shares next week. But of course, I do not purchase those shares if it's not going to help to lower my real price per share. But at that price on that day of 6/29, it was going to help me lower my real price per share, so I went ahead and purchased those shares. But before we get into all of this, if you don't mind, hit that like button as it would be much appreciated. So before we go in and we update my spreadsheet with that purchase along with the distributions, I wanted to show you one little thing that I think is very important to notice. And let's take a look at CONY real quick, because this does show my position in CONY right here. It's showing I have 420 shares, and it gives that average purchase price right here, right? That's my average purchase price, and it's also showing a negative $6,457. So it looks as if I have a losing position of CONY for a total of $6,400. Now, we know that I am down on CONY if you saw a few of my other videos, but am I down $6,400? No, I am not. And why am I not down a full $6,400? Because this number does not take into account those distributions that I've been earning over this period of owning CONY, along with the other high yield ETFs, right? And this is what I mean by you can't just look at the broker app on your phone or the computer and really understand where you currently set in that position. Because if I only looked at this, it's showing I'm down $6,400 on CONY. And we'll take a look at a couple others for comparison, because I think this is very interesting. So if we could compare this number to my spreadsheet, I think you'll see a big difference. So my broker shows me at $6,400 down, not including those distributions, of course. But on my stock tracker sheet, you can see I am not down $6,400. I am down on the position, yes, but I am only down $2,600 for CONY. Now that's a big difference because I have been earning distributions, and those distributions is almost $3,600 worth of distributions. And that's why making sure that you are calculating what your real price per share is and why that's the important price really to pay attention to. Because that takes into account those distributions versus the broker app does not. It shows what that overall purchase price is, and that's it. At least that's the way it is on mine. And yours may be different depending on the platform, but for the platform I use, it shows that I'm down $6,400, but I'm actually only down $2,600. Now, yes, of course, I am still down, and I do not want to be down on it, right? But I am. But it's not as bad as what is shown on my broker app. And another example right here would be PLTY. Now, PLTY I'm showing is paid off, meaning that I have earned back more in distributions right here than I actually invested, right? because I have earned back in distributions of about $2,500 and I invested $2,200. So for this one, I have earned back what I invested in the way of distributions. So therefore, PLTY is paid off. But what does the broker app show me? And here we are on my broker app, and you can see right there's my position. And that is showing that I am down $1,110. So if I were only looking at my broker app and seeing if I am up or down in that position, this here shows that I am at a loss on PLTY. It's showing that I am losing a total of $1,100, and that's not true because it is not taking into account those distributions. So instead of being down $1,100, I am actually up $1,435 on PLTY. So I hope you're starting to see a little bit of a difference in why tracking that real price per share and using this spreadsheet or something that can help you to keep track of those distributions is so important. And the last example I'm going to use will be AMDY right here, because AMDY, it's showing that if I were to sell everything out of AMDY, I would make about $6,000. But am I showing a positive or a negative in my broker app? And right here we are on AMDY. Look at this. It's showing that I have a loss of $4,193. Now, you can't tell me that that would not affect how you feel about these high yield ETFs. Now, granted, I do capture my distributions. I am not rolling them back in. I do buy more shares when it benefits me to help bring down my real price per share, but I am not dripping these distributions because I don't treat these high yield ETFs like I would a stock that I see going up and to the right for the majority of its life, right? I play these high yield ETFs quite differently. But you can see just on AMDY showing that I am at a loss of $4,193. But when I look at my spreadsheet, I'm actually showing a gain of $6,000. And that's just because in distributions alone, I have earned $10,324, as you can see right here on my screen. And how much do I have invested? Well, I had $12,970 invested, but I have earned back $10,324. So that's only a difference right there of about $2,000. But with the price of AMDY being so high, if I were to sell out of AMDY, I would actually make $6,086 for AMDY. And that's counting and using those distributions that I have earned for just owning those shares. So that's kind of the difference, and that's why I think this spreadsheet is very important, if anything, just to keep your mind right. Because if all you see is red in your portfolio on your broker app, it looks like you're at a loss on them all, and then you just sell out of them because you want to stop the bleeding. But this spreadsheet helps to clear that up a bit, at least in my opinion. It's going to calculate those distributions back into your average to help generate that real price per share right here. Now, of course, none of this is financial advice, and you do have to make your own decisions whether you sell, buy, or hold anything in the stock market, including these high yield ETFs. But I believe this spreadsheet can give you a nice idea of what you possibly could have. So that's why I use this spreadsheet, and I really don't pay a whole lot of attention to my broker app for that gain and loss because it does not account for those distributions. So now that we have gone over why I bought SMCY, and that's because it dropped below that 10 on the RSI2, and that's one of the indicators that I look for. It's not necessarily saying that that's the time that you should buy, but that's when I decide that I am looking to buy if it does hit that indicator and drop below 10 on that RSI2. And I've also shown you the differences between that gain and loss shown on the portfolio of your broker app versus my spreadsheet that's actually going to calculate that real price per share, which gives you a better idea of where you actually stand in your position, because it does calculate and take into account those distributions. Now, of course, depending on whether or not you are capturing those distributions or you are dripping them back in, that will affect that real price per share. But either way, it's still good to really understand what your real average price per share is, or your real price per share, as this is your adjusted price per share, which takes into account those distributions. So now that we're on my spreadsheet, let's just go ahead and let's update my spreadsheet to enter in for those distributions and that additional purchase that I did make on SMCY. So let's enter in all of that, find out what my real price per share for each of these will change to, and see what that new gain will also adjust to. Because currently it's at $24,174, but after entering in my distributions, that will increase by whatever amount we have earned for those high yield ETFs. And before we get started here, if you would like to get a copy of this spreadsheet, come on over, join the Discord. That link is in the pinned comments and in the descriptions below, where you can make a copy of this spreadsheet so that you can enter in your own high yield ETFs along with your purchases and your distributions that you have earned for each one, and help to calculate what your real price per share is. So now let's just go ahead and get started right off with CONY. And if you're using my spreadsheet, it's easy to get to those individual sheets for each of these high yield ETFs. All you have to do is hover right over top of that ticker symbol. It gives a nice little pop-up right here. And when you click it, it goes straight to that individual sheet. And boom, there we go. So now we are on CONY. And if I scroll up, you can see right here's the individual stock purchases. So you would just enter in the date that you purchased it, the price per share that you purchased it at, and how many shares. And then for your individual distributions, I enter in the X date, the distribution per share amount that's shown on your broker app, and how many eligible shares are eligible for that distribution, because you do have to own those shares before the X date. You cannot own them at the X date or on the X date and still earn that distribution. You must own them before the X date in order to count those shares for that distribution. So for CONY, we'll scroll right on down, and I've already entered in that per share amount just to help speed this along. And this was on 7/2. We earned 23 cents this week, and I have a total of 420 shares. Now, previously I had 395, and that's because I did make a purchase in the last video, and we entered those in right here. One was on 624 and one was on 625. And if you remember that 625 distribution right here, I could not count that last purchase because it was on that X date. So that's why you can see that it's just 395 and not 420. Because that last purchase was on 625 for 25 shares. And since that's the same date as the X date, I had to subtract 25 shares from 420, and that gave me 395. But for this week, this distribution's on 7/2. And since I do not have any purchases on or after 7/2, I can count all 420 shares for this distribution at July the 2nd. And we earned 23 cents. So I enter in my new share count of 420 to account for all the shares I do own, because I do get that distribution for all those shares. And that's going to adjust that real price per share from $26.76 down to $26.52. So if I were to sell all my shares of CONY at $20.40, I would still take a loss, but it would only be a loss of $2,571. Moving forward, we have PLTY. Now, PLTY is paid off, and we went over how I determine when it's actually paid off, and that is when I have earned more in distributions than I actually had invested, right? So I've earned back more than I actually spent Therefore, it is paid off. And we earned 25 cents this week. And I have a total of 37 shares. So that's going to lower that real price per share of minus $8.31 down to minus $8.57. So I'm moving even further and further away from that 0 point. So this one is just paying me those distributions free and clear, not including taxes, of course. But if I were to sell all my shares of PLTY at the current price of $30.49, I would make $1,445 on PLTY. And that's instead of that loss that was shown on my broker app of $1,110 loss. And that's what I mean by you need to make sure that you are calculating these high yield ETFs properly because of those distributions. And that's why you need to make sure you are calculating for your real price per share, which is basically your adjusted price per share, taking into account those distributions. Moving forward, we have NVDY. And NVDY, I have 71 shares, and we earned 9 cents this week. And that's going to lower my real price per share of $9.24 down to $9.14. And if I were to sell all my shares in NVDY at the current price, I would make $211. For ULTY, we earned 34 cents, and I have a total of 56 shares. So that's going to lower my real price per share of $28.32 down to $27.98. And if I were to sell all my shares of ULTY at the current price, I would make $24. For MSTY, I earned 15 cents in distribution, and I have 95 shares, which is going to lower that real price per share of minus $14.05 because it is indeed paid off because I've earned more in distributions than I actually had invested into MSTY. But those 95 shares is going to help to lower that real price per share from minus $14.05 down to $14.21. Now, the number, of course, looks like it's increasing, right? But that is a minus, right? That's a negative number. So it is moving further and further away from that 0 point. For SMCY. Now, before I enter in that distribution for SMCY, I did make a purchase, as I stated earlier. And that purchase was on 6/29, as we showed on the chart. And that purchase price that I actually got those shares at was at $4.89 per share. And how many shares did I buy? I bought 100 shares. So that's basically going to be about $489 to buy those 100 shares. But since this share price of $4.89 is under my real price per share of $5.57, it is going to lower that real price per share, which only helps narrow that gap between the current price and my real price, which is what I am shooting for. So just that purchase alone is going to drop my real price per share of $5.57 down to $5.42. Now, of course, I do get to enter in my distribution, and that's even going to lower that real price per share a bit more. So let's scroll right on down, and we earned 7 cents this week. And how many shares do I get to count for that distribution? Well, the distribution X date is on July 2nd. I purchased my last purchase on June 29th. So since that is before July 2nd, I can account for all 450 shares. So that is the number I enter in because those are the number of shares I have that does get paid out that distribution. And that's 450 shares at 7 cents, which is going to help reduce that real price per share of $5.42 down to $5.34. So I'm currently still down on SMCY because the price did drop, but I'm only down $315. For AMDY, I have a total of 164 shares and we earned 79 cents this week. So that's going to help to drop that real price per share of $16.14 down to $15.34. So therefore, if I had to sell all my shares of AMDY at the current price of $53.25, I would make $6,217. For YMAX, I have a total of 758 shares. We earned 7 cents, and that is going to help reduce that real price per share of 563 down to 556. And therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of YMAX at the current price, I would make $1,789 on YMAX. For HUI, we earned 42 cents. And as you can see, I only accounted for 126 shares last week for that distribution, but I have a total of 151 shares. So let's look at why that is different. And you can see right here, I have this purchase on 6/25 for 25 shares. If I scroll back down, that distribution X date was on 6/25. So I could not count those additional 25 shares for that distribution. But I can count it for this distribution because this distribution X date is on July 2nd, and that purchase for those 25 shares on HUI was on 6/25 or June 25th. So now I can count those, and therefore I can account for all 151 shares of HUI. So scroll back down and I enter in the full amount of 151. And that 42 cent distribution is going to help to reduce my real price per share of $34.43 down to $34 even. And therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of HUI at the current price, I would take a loss, but it would only be $209. And that's not $1,808 as shown on my broker app, because it does not account for those distributions. So moving forward, we have QDTE. We earned 24 cents this week, and I have 155 shares. That's going to lower that real price per share of $19.12 down to $18.88. And therefore, if I had to sell all my shares of QDTE at the current price, I would make $1,716. For IWMY, we earned 11 cents, and I have 551 shares. That's going to help to lower that real price per share of $13.31 down to $13.20. And if I were to sell all my shares of IWMY at the current price of $19.60, I would make $3,528. For QQQY, we earned 13 cents, and I have 551 shares of QQQY, and that's going to help to lower that real price per share from $17.38 down to $17.24. So as you can see, I am continually to lower my real price per share because I have no idea what that current price of that ETF is going to do. It could be moving up, or it could be going sideways, or it could be moving down. Either way, I always want to lower my real price per share because I do not know what that ETF is going to do tomorrow. But if I were to sell all my shares of QQQY at the current price of $23.22, I would make $3,294. For WDTE, we earned 17 cents, and I have 540 shares, and that's going to lower that real price per share of $22.66 down to $22.49. And if I were to sell all my shares of WDTE at the current price of $29.84, I would make $3,969. For JEPQ, we earned 63 cents. And this is a monthly payer, and it usually pays out the first of the month. So I am able to show a distribution this round, and we earned 63 cents this month. And how many shares do I have? I have 55 shares. So that's going to lower that real price per share of $7.97 down to $7.33. And if I were to sell all my shares of JEPQ at the current price of $59.39, I would make $2,863. And last but not least, we have Divo. And for Divo, that is also a monthly payer, and it pays at the end of each month. And we already showed that distribution last week of that 18 cents. So we do not have one to show for this week, so that my real price per share of $44.01 still stands. And therefore, if I were to sell all my shares of Divo at the current price of $46.43, I would make $41.20. And that's the last high yield ETF that I do own. So to get back to my summary page, it's quick and easy. Hover right over this tab, and this back to summary cell right here is available in all of those individual sheets. So you can always go back to that summary page from each and every one of the individual sheets that you have in your workbook here. So hover over it, you get the pop-up, click it, it takes you right back to that summary page. Quick and easy. You can easily toggle between the individual sheet and the summary page so that you can keep track and easily go back and forth without having to scroll through the tabs at the bottom, find out which one that you want to look at. It just makes it nice and simple. So after entering all of those distributions and that purchase, you can see that my gain did increase. It went to $24,890 gain. And that is if I sold out of all of these high yield ETFs at that current price that was shown for that market price, I would gain $24,890, not including any taxes, of course. So again, if you would like to get a copy of this spreadsheet, come on over, join the Discord, and within the Discord, there's a channel called Spreadsheets. And at that point, you will be able to see that there is a link that you can click, and that will take you to the Google sheet of my high yield stock tracker sheet, which will pull up that template. Now, you'll need to go in and make a copy of that template because that template is a read only. It will not allow you to adjust or edit that copy. You must go in and make your copy. And to do that, it's pretty simple. You click File and you click Make a Copy right there. And that's it. Pretty simple. Make a copy, tell it where you want to save it, name it whatever you want, and you're good to go. And of course, when you do download that, the first tab will be Download Your Copy. And right here shows you exactly what I just showed you. Click the file, click Make a Copy, and you're good to go. So I hope that helps everyone out, as you do not want to request edit rights, right? You want to go in and make your copy of that template so that you can enter in your own high yield ETFs, your distributions, and your purchases so that you can track your real price per share. So come on over, join that Discord. That link is in the pinned comments and in the descriptions below so that you can get your copy and you can start tracking what your real price per share is. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button and smash the like button, as it would be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, Legend out.